Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my shop. Today I got another full build YouTube video for you guys. I already started a billet of Damascus. I've got 9 layers of 1084 and 1520 already forge welded, drawn out, ready to go. So this video will start with that. I don't want to give away too much, but I'll say the knife definitely fought me along the way, and it was definitely worth it in the end. I just hope you guys enjoy watching. So I've got my starting billet here. This is 9 layers of 1520 and 1084. It's about 1.5 inches wide. I'd say maybe 1/2 inch thick, and it came out roughly 12.5 inches long. I think I plan to cut this into 3 pieces and stick a piece of 1084 in between each piece, and then forge weld those layers back together. Well, let's get that going. Once I'm sure the steel is welded together, I grind off the weld beads so that they don't end up in my final pattern, since they're mild steel and won't harden. So I've ground all the weld beads off to clean metal, and the billet's completely welded all the way through. It's one solid piece now. However, I did find a few deeper inclusions. One right here, and then not as deep there. I was able to grind them most of the way out, this one here. There's a few minor ones, like there and on this side. There and there. But I think those are just on the surface, not very deep, and I can get that stuck back together with some flux and some careful hammering. While I wait for the forge to heat up, I'd like to show you guys the design of knife that I'm going to be making. So here's a couple designs of a 6-inch long bowie knife with a few variations of handle type. The top one is a more ornate guard with a filed spacer, and then the bottom is a normal S guard with a more simplistic handle. The customer liked this one a little bit better, and I would have to agree. I think that fits the blade shape a little bit better. And another thing they were wanting was a cross inlay somewhere on the handle. I think the best place that I could integrate that is the butt of the handle. I could inlay a cross. I think I'm leaning more towards that design, but the simplistic one is pretty nice too. I'll have to see how I'm feeling when the time comes. As for the cross inlay, I think I'm going to use this piece of leftover, it's some sort of synthetic material. It's like a white pearl with a snakeskin pattern in there. It's pretty if it catches the light just right, and I think that'll make a great inlay. While I was checking the steel here, I realized the inclusions still have not welded back together, so I sprinkle on a little bit of borax to act as flux. flux is really good for this because not only does it protect the steel from oxidizing, but it also eats away at any forge scale that might be in between the layers, preventing them from welding. After a little bit of careful work, I think I got all the inclusions stuck back together, so that's good. We're gonna draw this piece out. As I was forging, I noticed that the layers started to delaminate again, which, believe it or not, is not ideal. But I just sprinkle some flux on it and stick it back in the forge, and I hope that's all it needs. So I got it all drawn out. It's 1.5 inches wide by 1/2 inch thick. However, there towards the end, it started to delaminate there on this corner here. Luckily, it doesn't look like it goes very far. It looks like it stops right there. So I should be able to cut it about there up, and the rest of it should be perfectly usable material. But my plan with this is to cut it in half and sandwich it with 80 CRV2 steel and make a sand-my billet, which means it'll have a 80 CRV2 edge with some 29 layer cladding on the outside. It'll end up being 59 layers, which isn't super high, but it should be high enough that we'll get some pretty interesting pattern going on. And I'm excited to see how it goes. So it's the next morning. I kind of ran out of time to forge last night. I had something going on, but right before I got done, something potentially catastrophic happened. You can see right there that crack. The Damascus, it looks like it's almost completely delaminating from the 80 CRV2 core. It looks like it stops about there. So I'm going to grind into it, see how deep it is, but I'm fairly certain it goes pretty deep into the billet. So I think at least this half of it is junk, but we'll see, and I hope I can salvage a little bit of it. Worst case scenario is this whole billet is trash, but I'm crossing my fingers that at least part of it is usable, but we'll see. Unfortunately, I was right, and the delamination went all the way through the steel, which basically means that almost half of the billet is unusable material. I could not make a knife out of it since it's not welded. But luckily, a good majority of the billet is usable, so I still have a lot of material to work with. Once I'm done forging, I do a little bit of math to figure out how much I need for this specific knife. When I'm done forging, I heat the blade back up and I stick it in a bucket of vermiculite. This anneals the metal, which basically means it makes it softer and easier to cut with a grinder or a drill press. This is what it's like being a knife maker in the Midwest during winter. When I'm done grinding the profile of the knife, I move on to flattening the ricasso. This is the part of the knife that's between the guard and the cutting edge. It's important to get the ricasso as flat as I possibly can because I use it as a reference for nearly every other measurement for the knife. While it's not perfect, I was able to get it flat within about 2/1000ths of an inch. For reference, a human hair is about 3/1000ths. I then move on to squaring up these shoulders. It's also important that I drill the hole in the handle before I heat treat the knife. After the knife is hardened, it's nearly impossible to drill this hole. I then soften the corners of that hole with this chamfer bit. Before I start rough grinding, I like to find the center of my knife. This is why the ricasso being flat is really important. With all the holes drilled and the rough grinding done, it's finally time to heat treat. Once the blade becomes fully non-magnetic, I take it out of the forge and let it air cool. This is called normalizing, and essentially it just resets the grain structure inside of the steel. It removes any sort of stress that might be in the steel, as well as evens out the crystal structure within. Once the blade has cooled to room temperature, I heat the blade back up and quench it in oil to harden. The file skates over the entire edge, meaning this blade is fully hard. I then like to use this specific set of files to see exactly how hard my blade got. The maximum hardness for this steel is over 65 Rockwell, and this specific file is exactly 65 Rockwell, so I know if it does not cut the blade is harder than the file. The blade is actually too hard now, and it's pretty brittle, so I temper it in my oven to reduce that hardness and add strength to the blade. I plan to temper it down to about 61 or 62 Rockwell. This is the perfect medium of edge retention and blade toughness. Using these test files, it looks like the blade came out just about perfect. The 60 file skates, while the 65 digs in a little bit. Here I'm filling that oversized hole I drilled with a brass pin. And then I move on to grinding the knife to final shape. As I dial in the edge geometry, I like to test the knife to make sure everything's where it should be. I hand sand the knife and get it prepared for fitting up the guard. From here, there's a bunch of checking, pretty much just tapping it on, taking it back off, and then filing it where I need to. Quenching non-ferrous metals like this bronze in water actually anneals it. There were a few small gaps in my fit up with the knife, so this just softens it and makes it easier to close those gaps with a hammer. I found another spare piece of this pearl snake material, and I think it'd make a beautiful spacer. I do a little bit of rough profiling on this piece of ebony before I drill the holes and fit it up to the knife. I then drill holes in each part of the handle for some lineup pins. This is to make sure all the pieces of the handle go back together the exact same every single time. One of the holes was too close to the slot in the handle, but luckily it's an easy fix. I just drilled another one. Now I'm able to use these lineup pins to make sure the handle fits together the same every time I put it together. With everything fitting together like it should, I now move over to shaping the guard. I use the guard as a template to profile the spacer. Right here, I noticed I made a pretty big mistake. When I initially profiled the handle, I accidentally ground the wood too far down. The guard and the spacer are exactly where I want them. I don't want to grind them any farther down. So because I ground the wood too deep originally, unfortunately this is unusable. But on the bright side, I have this piece of desert ironwood that was also a great contender for this knife. I really haven't gotten a lot of work done in the past week. Most notably, the piece of ebony that I originally wanted, I got a little too far ahead of myself and profiled it before fitting it to the knife. So now I'm using this piece of desert ironwood. It's pretty dark with a few bands of lighter brown in there. And it should be very pretty. It should still give me the effect I'm wanting with the darker wood. Also, I've been practicing inlay. The first attempt, complete garbage. It did not work out at all. Here's my second attempt. It's okay. It cracked there. Third attempt, on the back, the piece of wood completely broke out while I was trying to fit it in there. Not ideal. My fourth attempt was a little bit better, but again, this white material is very brittle and it cracked right there in the middle. But then finally, my fifth attempt, it still needs quite a bit of work, but I think it's close enough that if I take my time, I think I can get it looking good on the final knife. So I'm getting ready to work up the courage to tackle that. I found it a little bit easier if I shape the handle before I start the inlay. I trace the back of the handle so I know how big the inlay can be. I then trace it onto paper and fold it in half so that when I draw the cross, it will be as symmetrical as I can get it. I make sure the template fits on the back of the knife before I fine-tune it with files. I use a Dremel tool with a really fine burr to slowly remove material. I found it best to work in small sections and checking the fit up of the cross frequently. When I'm happy with the fit up, I secure it as well as fill in some gaps with super glue. With the inlay done, I go back to the grinder to sculpt the handle to final shape. The last major thing to do is drill the hole in the handle for the pin. All that's left to do to this knife now is to polish everything up. With the blade fully polished, it's time for me to put my name on it. I use electricity and a saltwater mixture to eat away at the metal. I use my buffer to achieve a little bit higher of a polish on the blade before I etch it. I etched the blade in a solution of ferric chloride and distilled water. You can see the pattern even after only a few seconds in the acid. This pattern is due to the different layers of steel we were forging out in the beginning of the video. The 1084 is just a normal high carbon steel, so the acid eats it away a little bit. The 15 and 20 has a little bit of nickel in it, so it resists the acid, and you can see it as a brighter steel in the pattern. The acid eats away at this steel, but I don't really like the finish it gives. So I use acid for the depth, and then I put it in instant coffee to give me the right color. After a few hours in the coffee, I rinse it off and dry it with a heat gun. The nice dark finish is a little bit delicate right out of the coffee, So I apply a little bit of oil and just let it sit for several hours to fully set up. After a few hours, the blade is ready to apply carnauba wax. When the blade is heated up, the carnauba wax will melt into all the nooks and crannies of the pattern. Once the blade is fully coated, I wipe off the excess with a paper towel. I've been trying out this True Oil recently, and I think I really like the finish, so I apply a little bit to the handle. It's a thicker oil, and after about 24 hours, it sets up almost like an epoxy. Once it's set up, I go over the entire handle again with really fine sandpaper before applying another coat. I do this as many times as I think it needs, usually about 3 or 4. Now back to the blade. I take this sunshine cloth and I polish the carnauba wax. This helps shine up that bright 15 and 20 steel. With everything done, it's time to finally glue up the knife. A trick I learned pretty recently is I took a scrap piece of wood and I ground it to accept the end of this handle. This makes clamping the blade so much easier. I make sure to wipe off any epoxy that might have leaked out during the glue up. I also apply a thick coat of oil on the outside of the handle and on the blade. This keeps any epoxy that I might have happened to miss from fully setting up. It's not super necessary, but it's more of a reassurance for me. Now that the knife is fully cured, I want these pins to be flush with the handle. I very carefully sand them down flush with fine sandpaper, and then add a final coat of oil. Right before the knife is completely finished, I like to shift focus and make the sheath. I'll try not to talk a whole lot and let you enjoy the process. With the sheath done, all that's left to do now is sharpen the knife. And now I present to you the finished knife. Like I said before, this one fought me, but the final product was well worth the effort. This was the first time I've attempted an inlay, and I'm happy with the result. Although there's still plenty of room for improvement, there's a lot of new doors that have also opened for creativity. But thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and let me know what you thought about the video in the comments. But as for now, enjoy these views of the finished knife, and I'll see you guys in the next one.